morning and welcome to today's edition of the Sports Break here on RVNTV.tv. I'm your host, Renee Washington, and actually I'm here by myself today. For the very first time on the Sports Break, we're actually going to do something a little bit different today, so bear with me. We're going to talk about the impact and controversy behind sports. Now, I always felt like sports were a great platform to make change and speak out on change. So today, we're actually going to talk about some of the things that are going on in sports that have affected our society as a whole. And for me personally, as the daughter of a woman that has 2 master's degrees, a father that played basketball overseas and has his college degree, 2 older sisters with their masters, myself with a master's, a former 3-time All-American soccer player, in a sport where I was always the only black face on the field. And a path that got me to this point where I'm in a field that is predominantly male. You know, everybody around me is predominantly male. So I have to speak out. And it's not going to be about me, I promise. But I will say that I have some experience in living as a minority, as an African-American female that is also nearly 6 feet tall. So I'm also often the tallest person in the room. But that aside, there has been a lot going on. Yesterday was 9/11, marking the 16th anniversary of the day that shook our country. 9/11, and I still remember being in 4th grade and seeing those images go across my TV screen, not fully understanding what's happening. But it also marks some other historical events that are going on in our society. So if you do not know, in January of 1965, 52 years ago, there was a boycott in the then AFL. Now we know it as the NFL. During an all-star game, it was 6 months after the Civil Rights Act was signed. 21 African-American football players boycotted the all-star game down in New Orleans. Why? Because they were dealt racial slurs while they were in New Orleans. They weren't allowed to go into the same restaurants and businesses. They weren't even given rides in a taxi because they were black. And this was 6 months after the Civil Rights Act was signed. Also, around 60 years ago, we had the Jackie Robinson of women's tennis. That was Althea Gibson. She was the first African-American female to ever be the top-ranked tennis player in the world, and also did it in golf. She won the U.S. Open 60 years ago. So we're going to talk a little bit about football and some tennis stuff going on. Up first, if you haven't already heard, Michael Bennett, everything going on with the Seattle Seahawks defensive end. So while he was in Las Vegas, while many of us were watching the Floyd Mayweather and McGregor fight, he actually was being detained for about 10 minutes. So following the fight, he was out at a nightclub, and as you can see in the image on your screen, there was a shooting that happened. There were gunshots. People were running in different directions. Police were looking to find who the suspect was, unsure of exactly who it was. So they were looking for what they called suspicious activity. Michael Bennett was one of the people in the crowd. He was hiding at the time. Police report that he allegedly got up and ran as soon as he saw the police officers. So to them, he looked like a suspicious person. They followed him, chased him, and as you see in this image, they did arrest him and detain him for 10 minutes before releasing him. The controversy is this. Michael Bennett is saying that he understands why they did it, but he doesn't understand why a gun was held to his head, why a knee was put in his back, and why he was treated so poorly. And in his opinion, it was over the top. He feels like he was mistreated because he was a black man and he looked suspicious. So his father has spoken out, Michael Bennett Sr. He wrote a letter about waking up 4:30 in the morning to hear his son on the phone saying, "Dad, I've been arrested. Dad, this is what happened. This is what's going on." A phone call that no parent, sibling, anyone should have to ever hear. And as of Sunday, when we had week 1 and the most football games that we watched, many players have been speaking out and have been voicing their opinions verbally and non-verbally. And for Michael Bennett, I don't think this is over. He is still considering filing a civil lawsuit. The police are in the process of investigating over 120 tapes of evidence. There has been one video that TMZ Sports has released that shows the incident, but it's not a very good video of the incident because you see, this is actually a screenshot of the video that TMZ Sports released. And it's somebody's cell phone from a balcony. They only capture moments of the arrest, but also the police officer that is in the image and the second police officer that later came and allegedly put his knee in Michael Bennett's back, neither of them had their body cameras on at the time. So what am I saying here? I don't know what happened. I was not there. You were not there. We don't have body cameras. the footage from body cameras. There is a body camera footage from one officer that was not actually at the scene. He came running in later as Michael Bennett was already on the ground in the image that we saw. So we have no direct footage of exactly what happened. We have the police officer's report, we have Michael Bennett's report. We're not really sure who is telling the truth here, or what is the truth here. And we don't really know exactly what happened. So is this an issue of race? I don't know. The facts are out there. The opinions are out there. In my opinion, I can't make that decision until we know exactly what happened. But I do have Michael Bennett has said in a long letter titled Dear World, he talks about the incident and how even though he complied, 2 officers ran over, jammed their knee into his back, as I mentioned, making it hard for him to breathe. And his opinion, he quotes that he feels like he was just a black man in the wrong place at the wrong time. And the hard part about this is, for someone that isn't African American, that is a very real thing, or even a minority in general. And this whole segment is talking about minorities. It's not black versus white. Let me make that clear. It's more about the issue of minority versus majority. And in this situation, Michael Bennett was a minority who was, in his opinion, mistreated by the majority. And so, in light of everything that has been going on throughout the last few years, this is not the first incident of this. We had Charlottesville with the protests that became very violent, including a man that drove a car into a crowd of people. We had the Seattle rally that also turned violent. We had shootings and killings such as Philando Castile, Sandra Bland, Freddie Gray, all these incidents that have been happening, and all these people that are a minority and are being mistreated by the majority. So as a whole, who am I to say this is a black versus white thing? But what I do see here is an issue that lies beyond just race. And that's what we're discussing here on our show today. There are some things that need to change in our country. Our country is founded, unfortunately, on things like slavery, things like discrimination and hatred and feeling and having the elitist versus the minority, whether it's a social class issue, a racial issue, an economic issue, an education issue. There are gaps in our country that are leading people to be mistreated, discriminated, and looked down upon. And that is the bigger issue beyond just race. So what will it take for change to happen? What will it take for a situation like Michael Bennett or the Charlottesville the awful event that happened in Charlottesville, or the shootings that have been happening, or the fact that now African American teenagers, like my very own younger brother, are petrified to even drive in a car or be in a car with more than 2 guys because you may be looked at as a gang, or you may be looked at as being in a situation that you're doing something wrong, when really you're just out driving with friends. What will it take for these things to change? What will it take for this discrimination, for people to see other people as who they are, human beings, not black or white, not tall or short, fat, skinny, rich, poor, dumb or intelligent, whatever terms you want to use, but as simply being the person they are. And Michael Bennett has spoken up saying that for football players in general, in order for everything to change that has been going on surrounding, starting back with Colin Kaepernick deciding to kneel, it would take a white player such as a Tom Brady or an Aaron Rodgers to be the person to make the change, to be the person to kneel. We've been seeing players put their arms on their teammates' shoulders as they kneel. Kneel with them. We've been seeing players put their arms on players' shoulders as they raise their fist up. Raise your fist as well. And I think that that's the hard thing for us to grasp right now. So the fact is this. Everyone's America is different, depending on the shoes you're standing in, the eyes you're looking through, the color of your skin, the clothes you wear, whether you have tattered clothes or you're wearing the latest, greatest, name brand clothing. Everyone's America is different. And that is the problem that people struggle to really understand. We want to see America as the home of the great, beautiful, everyone has an opportunity, an equal opportunity, where in fact, we don't. We're all different, and we can't accept our differences, and until we do, we cannot move forward as a country. So we're going to go to a quick break. I know we're getting into some deep and heavy things right now, but again, I feel like in light of different things going on, from hurricanes to 9/11 to things going on with sports in terms of politics and civil and social justice, we have to talk about this. This is the sports break. So we're going to be right back. We're going to go on a quick break. When we get back, we're going to talk about something else that happened on Sunday involving the Cleveland Browns. Don't go too far. We'll be right back.
Most of the time, it's easy to know which option is better. Other times, not so much. So it's good to know that Mazola corn oil has 4 times more cholesterol-blocking plant sterols than olive oil. And a recent study found that it can help lower cholesterol 2 times more. Take care of those you love and cook deliciously. Mazola makes it better.
La Esperanza Mexican Restaurant and Bar, the best authentic Mexican restaurant in South Jersey. Your friends and family will enjoy the fun and the food, like our staple guacamole, tamales, and ceviche. Our weekday lunch special is just $7.99. We also offer Saturday and Sunday brunch. Enjoy the largest selection of tequilas in South Jersey, Mexican beers, bottle and draft beers, fresh margaritas, and daily beer and margarita specials. La Esperanza Mexican Restaurant and Bar, family owned and operated since 2002.
Hi, I'm Becky.
And I'm Eric.
And this is Cookin' Uncorked.
It is.
It is. And you can check us out Mondays at 10:30.
10:30 every Monday.
See you there. Got a quarter?
Welcome back to the Sports Break. I'm your host, Renee Washington, here today by myself. And we just got into some pretty heavy things talking about what happened with Michael Bennett, the defensive end for the Seattle Seahawks. But the next question I have to ask, and I already talked about the fact that 52 years ago, 21 black football players boycotted the AFL All-Star Game. And how did they make the league change? Well, once they decided to sit out and they made that stand together, the league changed the All-Star Game from New Orleans to Houston. And they were able to play in the game. They were treated fairly. And here we are now, 52 years later, and we see players as of week 1, and we see fans as of week 1 still protesting about social justice. So what will it take to change? Well, on Sunday in the season opener against the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Cleveland Browns, this was phenomenal to see, ran out of their tunnel with military personnel, police officers, firefighters. You can see in this image, they stood next to each other, shoulder to shoulder, as the national anthem played. You have people of different races, backgrounds, religious beliefs, a whole variety of people. It's not just the black versus white thing. Again, that's the main thing I'm trying to stress here. It's a unity thing. Something about our country standing together, and that's what we see here in this image. So they ran out together. The entire stadium, if you watch the video, it was electric. It was exciting. Everyone was on their feet. They were cheering. Everyone was standing together. My thing that I always say is we either fall in division and we fall in violence, or we stand in unity and peace. And here, as we saw in that image, people were standing together in peace. Now, Oakland Raiders' Marshawn Lynch, beast mode, is back. He knelt. Bennett, who we just talked about, given all the circumstances that are going around his incident that happened in Las Vegas, he knelt. His brother, who he was playing against, also knelt. As Bennett knelt, a teammate, Justin Britt, stood with his hand on his shoulder. We also saw in Kansas City, the Chiefs, they were the very first game in which a player, Marcus Peters, sat during the national anthem. So are these things going to lead to change? We don't know. 1 year ago, Colin Kaepernick knelt and shocked the entire world because we didn't understand why he was not standing to the national anthem. Why would you not honor your country? Why would you not want to stand proudly as the words are ringing through the stadium? Well, some people view Kaepernick as a hero. Some people view him as a traitor. And there have been many different people that have spoken up about that. So here we are, a season later. The brutality continues, unfortunately. We're still seeing acts of social injustice. We're still seeing protests. And again, beyond just race. This goes along with sexual orientation and gender preferences, or how you even identify yourself. This goes along with being a minority in terms of gender, being a minority in terms of your religious views. beyond just race. We're still seeing this today, and I don't know if it will ever change. But Tom Brady, quarterback for the New England Patriots, the Tom Brady, said that he doesn't really know Kaepernick. He never had a conversation with him, and he doesn't really pay attention to that, especially not this time of year. Well, why not? It's your country too. It's going on right around you. And then we have people like President Donald Trump, who during his campaign said, quote, maybe he should find a country that works for him. And that was regarding Colin Kaepernick. And then we have civil rights activist Harry Edwards, who referred to Kaepernick as, quote, the Muhammad Ali of this generation. So Steph Curry of the Golden State Warriors has said that when Colin Kaepernick decided to kneel during the national anthem post, he shook the world for the better. And I'm hoping the same thing. He brought light to a conversation that people don't want to talk about, the elephant in the room. And that's what we're seeing 1 year later. We're still seeing the results of that. It's still going on. This summer, we saw people protesting for Kaepernick to get his job back, to get him on a roster somewhere, saying it's not fair that just because he decided to speak out, he shouldn't have his job. We saw, if you haven't been online, if you Google standing for Kaepernick, hashtag standing for Kaepernick, you will see websites of people all throughout the country who have decided they're going to protest game one of every stadium and speak up saying that Kaepernick should be on a team. So here we are, 1 year later, after he decided to first make that initial decision to kneel. Some people, again, are calling to even boycott the NFL, much like we had to do 52 years ago when those 21 players decided to boycott the AFL All-Star Game. Fans, especially, some that I even know, have decided they're not going to watch the NFL. They're just going to watch college football because they're making a stand and saying, I'm not going to support a league that doesn't support social justice and people having the right to choose whether or not they stand. I remember in elementary school when they would say under God, people would either listen or not listen, and it was the belief that not everybody believes in God. So if we can understand that from a religious side, why can't we understand that from a racial side or whatever your reasoning may be? Because again, America for some may not be the same America for others. So here we are in tennis. We're going to switch gears a little bit. As I talked about earlier, Althea Gibson, 60 years ago, became the first African-American female to ever win a tournament in tennis and be ranked the #1 player in tennis. So what's so special about this? I'll tell you in a second. I want to make sure I get this correctly. So the Jackie Robinson of tennis, Althea Gibson, the first person of color to ever win the Grand Slam title, also went on to be the top-ranked golf player, also went on to be inducted into the New Jersey, where we are at currently, Hall of Fame. And now, this past Saturday, well, let me rewind a little bit farther back. In the semifinals of the Grand Slam tournament, we saw 3 women of color in that tournament. Venus Williams, we saw Sloan Stephens, and then we saw her competitor, Madison Keys. Madison and Sloan Stephens did go on to win and compete against each other in the finals. Madison Keys, a biracial woman at 22 years old, 24-year-old Sloan Stephens, an African-American woman. So for the first time ever, we had 2 women of color competing against each other in a title that was won 60 years ago by the first woman of color. Now, Sloan Stephens did win. She won her first ever U.S. Open. She played a nearly perfect game. She had 6 unforced errors. She went 6-0 in one game, and she won the other game. It was a closer margin at 6-3. And as you see in this image here, Sloan Stephens is on the left in the orange. Madison Keys is on the right. And one of the greatest things about Stephens' win, besides the fact that she was she won her very first, over 5 weeks ago, she went from being the top 1,000 ranked player worldwide to the top 20th at number 17. She also, besides being the girlfriend of Josie Altidore, a U.S. soccer superstar, who actually made comments at halftime of his game for Toronto FC, congratulating her when he found out about her win, she overcame a lot of adversity. Besides the fact that she's an African-American female, she is also the daughter of a former NFL running back who tragically died in a car accident back in 2009. She's also the daughter of her mother, Sybil, who's very pretty and does not look like she's ever aged a day over 25. Sloan Stephens' mother, Sybil, was a former Division I All-American swimmer at Boston University and was the first ever African-American female to be named to the first team for All-American in Division I sports. Sloan Stephens followed in her parents' footsteps. Clearly she had great genes. And she went on to win the U.S. Open. Sloan Stephens also, less than a year ago, was facing a foot injury that kept her out for 11 months. Bounced back in August, was able to play, and even though she did not do great in August and had 2 back-to-back losses, I actually remember watching her in the City Open, she turned around in 5 weeks and went from, like I said, that top 1,000 ranking to a top 20 ranking to win the U.S. Open. So what's so great about this? Well, if you haven't been paying attention, 60 years ago, Althea Gibson was the first. 60 years later, we have 2 women that are both in the finals. So what does this say about sports? Sports, regardless what people want to admit and want to agree with, sports is a way to change the world around them. Because millions of people tune in every Sunday, Monday, and Thursday to watch football. Millions of people have tuned in to watch the U.S. Open, even went to the U.S. Open. Millions of people tune in to the World Cup and the Olympics and these big international soccer events and big basketball events and big even snowboarding and skiing and different sports, from water sports to snow sports and winter sports to our typical baseball, basketball, and football. So why is it that we can't use sports as a platform? Because we don't want to have the conversation. We don't want to talk about the elephant in the room. And we'd rather dance around the truth than attack it head on. And I'm saying today that on this Tuesday, September 12th, the day after the anniversary when our country was shaken upside down, the day that our country was seeing images of 2 towers full of people, mothers, fathers, daughters, sisters, brothers, cousins, husbands, wives, lives that were lost, firefighters that went rushing into towers or to the Pentagon or to the crash of the plane that did not make it to where it was supposed to hit. And we're trying to work together to save people. That we as a country have to come together to put aside our differences of whatever they may be. Again, not just black and white, not just male and female, but it doesn't, depending on who you prefer to date or marry, depending on how many degrees you have or how many zeros are in your bank account or your net worth or how many people you decide to associate with or who you decide to associate with. Regardless of our choices in life, whether we're a loner or not, whether we are the most popular person, the prettiest person, or the ugliest person, everyone is still a person. That's the key word. And my thing is this, before we go to a quick break. Bullying did not change with anti-bullying laws. Restraining orders do not always stop someone from still coming in contact with that person. Laws are, as we always say, meant to be broken. So why is it that we feel like because the Civil Rights Act was signed, because we signed laws to put in place gender equality and laws to allow people to marry the same sex, that suddenly we're just going to wake up and in the blink of an eye, we're going to change our perspective? It changes here, not with a sign of a pen. We're going to go to a quick break. When we get back, we're going to talk about some of the great things that J.J. Watt has been doing. J.J. Watt of the Houston, Texas has been doing with Hurricane Harvey and how sports are still impacting our world beyond just race. We'll be right back.
Didn't know, couldn't see what was around the corner from me. Let's go! Check me out, my legs are moving. Hands real smooth, gotta keep it moving. Take it fast, take it slow. Sing it all day, come on, let's go. Can't get enough of these crazy moves. Slide on by, now that's so smooth. Throw your hands up in the air. Bounce on down and down your hair. You stop, now that's real nice. Come on, get loose. Come on, let's go.
Hi, I'm your host, Renee Washington, here on the Sports Break on RVNTV.tv. Well, if you're still tuning in and you haven't completely turned away from this show because you're just frustrated with everything I'm saying, we're going to talk about something a little bit later. So, as I mentioned, sports do impact society, and they do it in more ways than one. And we've been seeing that in recent light of Hurricane Harvey, which, if you guys have not been paying attention, has just completely been a traumatizing hurricane that hit down in the Houston area. We also have had Hurricane Irma, which has ran through the islands into Florida and has also been wreaking havoc down there. Now, all this comes in light of the anniversary of Hurricane Katrina, which first hit land in August 29th of 2005. Here we are, years later, and we are now dealing with two hurricanes that, between the two of them, have damaged several houses, businesses, and left people completely homeless, essentially. So J.J. Watt of the Houston Texans, defensive end, big name player, he has stepped up for Houston. He has had originally planned to raise $200,000 to provide for people that have been affected by the Hurricane Harvey, that is. And if you haven't paid attention, as of Friday, he has raised $30 million for those people that have been affected. Now, J.J. Watt did not know what he was doing originally. He reached out to different people, like Project Rubicon, the St. Bernard Project, people that worked with Hurricane Katrina, and he found the ways to make it work. And the biggest thing he found was that time, and not rushing, and taking your time to really organize these efforts would make this the most successful campaign it possibly can be. And we've seen him in trucks delivering boxes of goods, food, clothing, things like that to people. We've seen him rushing out onto the field on Sunday with the the flag of Texas, as the entire stadium was up on their feet cheering for him, chanting his name in excitement. And what a moment that was for not J.J. Watt, not even just Houston, but for our country as a whole. And as I've been saying this entire segment, sports can bring people together to make change happen. And J.J. Watt right now is making change happen. Again, it did not just start with him signing his name on something, endorsing something, saying, here, just put my name on it. We're going to just say this is the J.J. Watt, project to raise money for Hurricane Harvey. No, he got out and he did it himself. He got out and he had a change of heart, a change of mind, and found a way to make it happen. And that is how change goes about. Getting up off your feet, instead of just talking about it, do something about it. Actions speak louder than words, right? So why do we always use our words first? Actions speak louder than words, so why do we question people when they do actions that we don't agree with? Actions speak louder than words, but we can't seem to understand why and how someone can have the audacity or the backbone to kneel during the national anthem. Because they're using their actions to make something happen, to voice something that they're feeling. And that is what I'm trying to do today, and I'm hoping that you guys are grasping too, is that regardless our differences, I may like soccer, you may not like soccer. I may hate cheese, and I do not like cheese, I'm sorry. I don't even like mac and cheese. But you may love mac and cheese and cheese in general. That doesn't make us any different in terms of where we are on the social ladder or the hierarchy of things. That just makes us different in preferences. And that is something that we have to grasp. So, unfortunately, we are out of time. I had to take notes or else I would have literally been here for probably like days, rambling on and on about my opinion and things going on, because this is a conversation we can have forever. But this is a conversation that needs to happen. And this is a conversation I encourage people to have more often. Not with anger and bitterness and frustration, but just to voice how you feel. You'll never know how someone else feels unless you talk to them. You'll never know what it's like to be in their shoes. You can't try them on. You can't trade spots with them. You can't trade lives with them. But you can listen to them and understand that they are also a daughter or a son or a soccer player or a chess player or someone that loves to read. Whatever it may be for them, they have something special about them that makes them unique and a good person in our country and our society. So that being said, thank you for joining us on today's deep, heavy, heartfelt edition of the Sports Break. I know we talked a lot about controversial issues going on in our country, from race and social justice to even things going on with the hurricane and historical things that have happened. But back here on Thursday at 9 a.m., I'll be here joined by someone else. You don't have to listen to me talk the whole time. We will be continuing to talk about things going on in the NBA, the NFL, and sports in general, because all sports are great, fun activities for everyone. So I'm your host, Renee Washington. Thanks for joining us today. I hope you have a great Tuesday. Don't take this too seriously because we're just having a conversation. But I will see you right back here on Thursday morning at 9 a.m. Have a great day.